Yes, now we are starting. Let me introduce myself first. My name is Sardar. I'm the CEO of INSPARK, and I'm going to guide through this presentation and demo today. I'm going to mention about INSPARK also, but let me also introduce Keith and Walter from Jitterbit. Keith is the director of EMEA Sales Engineering Department at Jitterbit, and Walter Bergers is also he's director of EMEA Business Development and Alliances Channels. Walter will take the agenda today is we are going to give some information about INSPARK. I'm going to do it, and then Walter is going to give some information about Jitterbit company and also the approach. After that, we are going to pass to Keith Rigg, and Keith is going to tell us some scenarios, how we solve some business issues, challenges, how we help digitalization, and he's going to go over the solution with the scenario, and he's going to describe that during his presentation. Now, let me start with INSPARK. Some people in this webinar already know us. We are working on Salesforce.com. We are doing Salesforce.com projects, customer-focused projects mostly. We are doing sales, service, marketing, e-commerce. But during our projects, we are actually specifying a vision to create a single truth of customer, single view of customer 360. And when you say that, you have to collect customer-related information from different sources, and it's like unlimited. You can find customer information in your internal systems, also some external sources like social media, other websites. When you're doing B2C business, you have different channels. When you have a B2B model, you have some other channels, different channels. You're using LinkedIn more when you're B2B, but Facebook more when you're B2C. So it's always changing, and it's getting rich and rich. Walter is going to give more information, but one of the two challenges we have during our Salesforce.com implementations is integration. We have completed over 500 Salesforce projects, and I can tell you, like 90% of our projects involve integration with different solutions because of this reason. So we are trying to achieve an integrated single view of customer using different methods. But I know Jitterbit for a long time. We were also using in different projects, different customers are using it. Now we are getting closer, and we are going to propose Jitterbit as a like a default solution with our projects, because we see there's a high return on value for to use Jitterbit. There are other facts and awards, some marketing things are on the screen. We are going to share this, but that's all I would like to say. And now I'm going to pass the word to Walter.
Thank you, Serdar, and thank you for the nice introduction, and thank you for hosting us today. Such a great audience in the Turkish market. My name is Wouter Bergers. I run all the channel and alliance business for Jitterbit in EMEA. So that means all our business partners, that will be strategic partners like Salesforce, but also specialists system integrators who make our customers successful. Jitterbit uses this tagline on the screen to present itself. We like to accelerate innovation through APIs and integration. And on the next slide, I would like to explain our vision and mission. Can you move to the next slide?
Sorry. Okay.
Yeah, so Jitterbit's mission is really about empowering innovation for clients, right? And we want to help you deliver exceptional experiences. And for that, you really need to connect your data, your people, and your processes. And we have offerings and technology to support you with that. Our vision is to be the most sought after partner. That's also the case with our system integrators. So how can we help work together and deliver best-in-class products and services to connect all your leading systems? Right? So that's really what it's about. And on the next slide, I can talk a bit about who we are. I think it's important to explain also where we come from as it relates to our vision and mission as well. So Jitterbit is active in the space called iPaaS, Integration Platform as a Service, as defined by Gartner. And we tag ourselves as being an API transformation company. So there's two main components to our tech: integration and APIs. Our target market is really in the upper mid market, and then we have enterprise cloud adopters. So it's a very varied audience. We have customers all over the world and also in every vertical, right? Using a great variety of systems. Jitterbit is also backed up. We're growing quickly, and we have sought out specific investors to help us with that. Our lead investor is KKR, a big private equity company in the US. And then our co-owners are Salesforce, Autodesk, and Primera Capital. Recently, in our last round, we have added Samsung, and Samsung is helping us to expand in Asia. As you can see, we've been accelerating our growth. Especially the last 3-4 years, things are picking up. So our current growth rate is above 70%. That's even above the market growth. So things are going really well, and there's reasons for that, which I will come back to later. We're also reaching enterprise scale, and that means that we truly have some customers using us now to connect hundreds of applications, right? And they're really using us in the most critical parts of the business, supply chain, etc. So that's really happening, and we're seeing more and more of that. As for market validation, I spoke of Gartner. We're in Gartner's iPaaS Magic Quadrant for 4 years now as a leader. But also check out, please, G2 Crowd. I think it's becoming more and more relevant. We're truly #1 there in customer satisfaction in a wide range of topics. Our team, our global presence is about 250 people right now, and we're adding to that all the time. And of course, partners play a critical role in our go-to-market. For the webinar today, for example, for the Turkish market, INSPARK is very valued, and we're putting a lot of time and effort in that. As you can see, we have a data loader product. It's a free tool on the App Exchange. It's one of the most downloaded tools on the App Exchange, and it's widely used in the Salesforce community. And from that, we have really grown the last few years, and we have made a commercial offering called Harmony, which we now have more than 2,000 paying customers for. Can we go to the next slide?
Before going to the next slide, maybe we can do it in a little bit interactive water. Can I say a few words? Actually, this slide really summarizes why we are getting closer to Jitterbit, because besides generating high return on investment for the customers, besides that, we are so related with Salesforce.com, but you are doing more out of Salesforce also, I know. We're both in Gartner's reports, and I didn't know that you were in the leader quadrant in Gartner's reports, but this is a very, very, very good achievement. So this already proves G2 Crowd and Gartner already proves how successful your solution and your company is. And by the way, I would like to say this, in the past, we were always looking for large solutions, large products, large companies, big companies. I think now the market is changing a little bit, and market is trying to find solutions and companies, vendors who are more flexible, who are more agile, who are more boutique, but still widely used by a big audience, proven success. So I think that's what I see, by the way, with Jitterbit. And this is it sounds kind of a marketing, but it's not. You know me, so I just wanted to say this.
Okay. Yeah, so maybe on the next slide we can, show some more about what Gartner is thinking. I thought to put this in because it's important for a variety of reasons, right? So we have been moving up quicker than other vendors. Gartner also have a review peer-to-peer like G2 Crowd, and there we are getting a lot of 5-star responses. But I think here, yeah, there's pros and cons to every vendor. As you can see, it's still early because there's a lot of vendors in this leader quadrant. And everybody is serving different audiences. So for us, we really want to drive the message around value for money, time to value, which I will come back to in the next slides, platform versatility, and then customer relationship management. So we have internally the same operating model as Salesforce. So if you become a customer, we're not just selling to you, we're selling in partnership with you and the partner, and you will have a customer success manager throughout the engagement, but also throughout the life cycle. Right? So it's very much our idea that we grow together confidently and we start adding other applications and become more and more important for you as a customer. Can we go to the next slide? Yeah, coming back to time to value. Yeah, customers, when we interview them, and Gartner does as well, they talk about our ability to be rapid, responsive, and achieve fast ROI. Right? I think over 75% of our customers go live in less than 30 days. 90% indicate achieving ROI on their investment in the first 12 months. And that's also backed up by our expansion ratios. So we're seeing a lot of customers keep buying more and more and coming back for more and more advice as well. Also important when we go into more critical parts of your business, response time, support, customer management, etc. So there you can see we're making very good numbers on being responsive and rapid. Can we go to the next slide? Yeah, we still get a lot of questions and good questions, valid questions around cloud and about being compliant and about adhering to all standards. We make a special effort for that. So we make sure that we stay compliant and that we add badges all the time. I think in the EU, yeah, GDPR is of course very important, but also you have these SOC 1 and 2. We engage in regular pen testing. So if there's any questions around this, we have an extensive architecture and security white paper to allay any concerns. In the next slide, I talk a bit about why customers choose Jitterbit. So we've done an extensive survey for ourselves to see, where can we improve, what's working, and we've asked customers, okay, why do you choose Jitterbit? And a lot of answers around our cloud-first approach. Right? So we have a more modern and innovative approach. So that's important. It's also the way we innovate. We do that together with customers and partners. Through our customer success model, we have a lot of insight on what's to be coming in the product right now. So there's clear engagement on that. We know what customers are thinking about, and we want to make sure that's widely available for our base. We're also built around the customer like that. That's also that customer success model. And we have a quicker time to value. Yeah, time and again, we hear that our deployments are very quick. We use a lot of accelerators. We have a lot of pre-built templates. But of course, every customer is different. And partners like INSPARK know your environment and your landscape the best. Looking at TCO, so why do customers choose us over other vendors? Most answer is around TCO. It's very easy for us to show total cost of ownership also for 1, 3, 5 year period using our tech. And we can help you also a lot with estimating the work. We can help you with changing packages. You can also change your licensing throughout the year. So that's very easy. Ease of use, the tool is very visual. It's very much low code, no code, click and configure. It's not uncommon for power users to do a lot of Jitterbit for their companies. Then the last speed, scalable. You of course want to start with certain scenarios or use cases, and then can you have a tool that you can also add to that? And can you keep adding? Yeah, well, we have a very elastic and scalable infrastructure behind it. It's all running on AWS in the EMEA time zone. So there's no issues around deploying more and more applications. You go to the next slide. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit at the last piece about the market overview and Jitterbit. This market space is growing very quickly. So iPaaS, according to Gartner, grows 40 to 60% per year. And there's reasons for that. As the sheer number of SaaS apps, it's already above 150,000. There's a lot of big data projects. There's more and more IoT in industry, more and more AI. So you want to tie everything together with your social, with your mobile. So this requires integration, right? Or at least it requires an integrated stack. And that's driving a lot of our projects beyond compliance, etc. In the next slide, you'll also see what's becoming more and more important for us is where's the demand coming from. So in the past, a lot of demand around this kind of tech was in supply chain, in operations, in field service, more core processes. The last 12 to 18 months, we see demand coming across the business. And more use cases makes it easier to do the business case. Recently, most demand is coming from marketing, e-commerce, CPQ, and also in the HR area of the business. In my last slide, you can see, in this next last slide, you can see some of the logos that we have been interacting with. So far in our thousands of customers deployed, we see a lot of variety in type of applications. And if we see a lot of global demand, we will develop, for example, connectors. We have recipes, we have templates. There's over 1,000 of these available in the technology. It's to enhance the value of the subscription, but it's also more importantly for our partners and customers to make use of this pre-built flows to accelerate their projects. So that's very important. And I think this also brings us to a more tech piece of our webinar today. I would like to hand over this presentation to Keith Rick. Keith is, of course, our senior technical architect in EMEA. And Keith will give a technical overview, like a briefing on our tech, but also a demonstration of some specific use cases.
I'm handing over to Keith now. Okay, Keith.
Thank you, Serdar. Thank you, Wouter. Okay, so just to set the scene before we jump into the product demonstration, the hypothetical use case which I'm going to demonstrate is centered around Salesforce. So if you consider a situation where you have a global front-end CRM system, Sales Cloud, for example, in a multinational business with potentially multiple subsidiaries, and that type of business might well have then multiple different back-end ERP or finance systems, either because they've been quite acquisitive and they've been through mergers and acquisitions, and so they've acquired different systems as they've built their business out globally, or because they have legacy ERP systems and they're looking to implement a new ERP system globally, but that's not a big bang. It's typically a phased approach. So you might then implement in phases across geographies or business units or legal entities. So we see many clients in this situation, either for legacy reasons or because of growth through acquisition. They have multiple different systems of the same type. Now, the typical challenge that presents for organizations of that type is that they don't have one view of the customer or one view of their accounts. And it's easy, relatively speaking, to bring in a global front-end CRM system in the cloud as a new part of your IT estate, but it's far more difficult to consolidate those back-end accounting and financial systems. So that's one of the many problems that Jitterbit can very effectively solve. So we can slot into the middle of that and be that secure conduit between legacy on-premise and public cloud, and then provide the agility for the business to change those business systems over time without getting caught up in knots. So that's kind of the background to the product demonstration. The specific functionality you'll see, we've got some ETL functionality, extract, transform, load. So this is really about moving data around, manipulating data, transforming data dynamically based on business rules, etc. We've got some event-based real-time messaging, which is very much the recommended way to approach integration. If you wind the clock back, 5-10 years, there was a lot more batch and schedule type thinking, overnight jobs every hour, dealing with batches of kind of transactions. Now it's more event-based push messaging, real-time, near real-time, which is far more effective than batch and scheduled, and of course means that your systems are always in sync. So no matter which system somebody goes to, they should get the same answer. We shouldn't get systems disagreeing and leading to confusion with your interactions with customers. We've got push notifications. In my case, I'm using Slack, but it could be any one of a number of messaging platforms. We're using something called a canonical data model or a common data model. What that really is a semantic layer. It's a way of abstracting or decoupling away from proprietary vendor-specific schemas. I'll come back to that in the product demonstration. It'll be clearer as to why that's powerful and why it's important in terms of your integration strategy. We're doing some dynamics rules-based routing, and that's really how we figure out which accounts in Salesforce at the front end live in which back-end ERP systems, SAP, NetSuite, another ERP system, and various other bits and pieces. Now, this is by no means an exhaustive list of functionality that Jitterbit can execute against, but it's a good cross-spectrum, a broad cross-spectrum of functionality. And whilst we have a use case in mind here, the same techniques can be used for near limitless, functional and business use cases. So what I'll do.
Keith, we cannot hear you. Keith.
Oh, sorry. I think it went on mute there for a second somehow.
Okay.
What I'll do now is step through the schematic, which illustrates the steps that I'll demonstrate in a moment. So we have Jitterbit in the middle, acting as the controlling entity, the thing that's bringing all the systems together. So the first step is to do a data load. This is the ETL step. So in my demo lab, I'm using SQL Azure, a Microsoft SQL Server. It could be any database, any ODBC, JDBC compliant database, on-premise or in the cloud. In my case, I'm using Microsoft SQL Azure. So I'm going to data load some student information into Salesforce using Jitterbit Salesforce Connector. And what that does, when the records arrive in Salesforce, it triggers a workflow rule that fires an outbound message. The outbound message is a event-based push notification to Jitterbit. So that hits a webhook API we published on our API gateway. So we're receiving notifications about events that we care about. So typically a record having been created or updated, in this case accounts. So that tells us that that has happened, and then we dial back, we dynamically craft the SOQL, the Salesforce query, to grab the relevant object and record, and then we process it thereafter. So the first bit's nice and dynamic. In real time, we're pushing notifications so you can see what's happening to Slack, but it doesn't have to be Slack. It could be WhatsApp, an SMS gateway, email, or another messaging tool. Then we're then mapping onto the canonical model I spoke about earlier, which is decoupling you away from the Salesforce schema at the back end and mapping you onto a common model, something that would be specific to you and your company, so that the schemas and the data entities that you care about, things like accounts, contacts, orders, invoices, whatever the objects are, they're in terminology that you understand within your business processes. And then we're able to, after that, dynamically route to whatever backend systems happen to live within your IT estate. In my case here, I'm going to SAP and NetSuite, and the split of the accounts from Salesforce to customers in both SAP and NetSuite at the back end is done dynamically based on inspecting the actual payload. Once the Salesforce accounts become created as customers in the backend ERP, we're actually taking the response of the customer creates from NetSuite and SAP and sending that back to Salesforce to close the loop out. So the customer IDs, the internal customer IDs in the ERPs becomes the external ID in Salesforce. So it's a two-way exchange of internal external IDs, or primary foreign keys, if you will. And that then sets us up for bi-directional synchronization of that customer object thereafter, which is how you achieve that 360-degree view. It's a multi-master model, essentially, with a data abstraction layer in the center, controlled by Jitterbit. Additionally, but we won't demonstrate this today, but we can talk to you about it offline if it's of interest. We have very comprehensive error handling, alerting, validation, data quality analysis type routines. In its simplest form, that could be email. In its more sophisticated form, that could be integrating with your ITSM or ITIL system, creating cases, incidents, wiring into an ops bridge, or even sending logging information into things like Splunk or Elastic. So there's lots of capability there as well. And then through the API gateway, in addition to the webhook, we can also publish RESTful services, microservices, and OData entities, which you can also use to dynamically surface data in Salesforce as opposed to replicating it. So that's another option where you can look to maybe dynamically present data in Salesforce as though it is actually in Salesforce, but it's a dynamic query to an external data source. So that's quite a powerful technique as well. I won't demonstrate those 2 points today, but that's just to kind of show you, what you can do, let's say. So what I'll do now is jump into the product demonstration and show you how this actually works. So if we come into Jitterbit itself initially, so this is Jitterbit. We're in the desktop studio here. We have two versions of the design experience. We have the desktop studio, which I'm presenting today, available for Windows and Mac as a client application. And we also have the cloud studio, which is a full browser-based user experience. They're both concerned with the design experience. So it's the design, test, and kind of deployment side of the solution. Once you deploy the solution, that's within the platform and runs on our agents in exactly the same way, regardless as to which studio you've used. So in terms of the project, we have a couple of steps here. The first step is this operation chain on screen. This is the bit which does the data load from SQL to Salesforce. And then once it triggers the outbound messages, the event-based piece, it hits this webhook API here. I'll come back to this in a moment. So an operation in its basic form is this item I'm wiggling around in the top left-hand corner here at the moment. So in its most basic form, it's made up of a source, a target, and most often a transformation. And it's nearly always a transformation because in most circumstances, you want to be able to transform the format or the payload from one form to another. In this case, I'm going from SQL to an in-memory store, and then I'm going into Salesforce. But it could be XML to JSON or vice versa. It could be EDI formats. It could be database. It could be SAP. We have a lot of connectors and a lot of different formats that we can handle. So what I'll do now is just jump into Salesforce. This is my developer org in Salesforce, Sales Cloud. So I'll just hit refresh here on the accounts tab, and you can see I have 9 accounts. So I'm going to mass delete these initially, just so that you know I'm not working with data which was there beforehand. So this is now empty. This is my SQL Server Management Studio linked into as a SQL. So these are my 9 test student records that I'm going to data load into Salesforce here. So if we come back to Jitterbit now and I run this operation, now that could be triggered dynamically or be it on a schedule. In this case, I'm running it on demand. And if I switch over to Slack now, what we should see is the data loading is taking place. The ETL work, the extract, transform, load is occurring. the SQL connector is connecting to Azure SQL. It's reading out the records. What it's actually doing is selecting the 9 IDs of the 9 records, sets up a looping node, and then iterates through each record in the record set, so 1 of 9, 2 of 9, 3 of 9, etc. And what it's doing then in the flow, for each record in the record set, it's doing an upsert to the account object and then an upsert to the contact object. And whilst that's happening, it's piping it out here to Slack just for kind of information purposes. So in terms of the mechanics of this is the request structure going in, loading the SQL data into Salesforce. The response from Salesforce would be the GUID, the globally unique ID of the newly created account. We capture that in a global variable and we pass it into the request structure of the contact so that we can associate the contact to the account in kind of a parent-child relationship. And then you can see here we have an API call linked into the request. So what we're doing here is using an external RESTful service to enrich in flight the request of the contact. So this is enriching that contact request upsert structure there. And what it actually does is take the 2-digit ISO code and then transforms it into the native name, into the full country name. So it's just a way of showing you how you can use a third-party data source as an enricher. And you can see, obviously, the operation is finished. These are the 9 IDs that we've processed, that we've looped through. So that was the first kind of operation chain as a flow. The Slack messages are finished, and you can see on the way out, or the way in, let's say, into Salesforce, you had new accounts created, so we have the account name in the GUID. And then when the return leg was coming back the other way from the relevant ERP systems, if we pick this one here, you can see it was updated with the SAP customer ID. That was then the upsert back into Salesforce to kind of close the loop out. If we now go back over to Salesforce and hit refresh, what you'll see is the 9 records there again. So if we pick Eric Hines and take a look at that account in more detail, the first thing you'll see is that we have a related record of the same name, a contact associated to this account. So the links have worked correctly. If we take a look at the detail tab, now this data is unaltered. It was passed through in its raw form as it stands in the database. So we've converted it from SQL to Salesforce, but we've not transformed the payload. And this was deliberate to show you the before, and then we'll move on to the after in a moment. So if we take a look at the contact, just pay attention to the state code and the country code as 2 examples of what we've done. If we then come to the detail of the contact, you can now see that the state code, the 2-digit state code, has been concatenated with the full state name. That was done using an internal key value lookup store. That's one technique for transforming using lookups. And the US, the 2-digit ISO code, was transformed to the native name of United States, and that was done using the external RESTful service. So we actually executed a publicly available API, got the JSON response back and stripped out the relevant answer, and then substituted United States for US. And there's a whole load of other things which happened here. We've concatenated strings of text and dynamic labels into the description field. We set the level, the education level of the student to a predefined pick list item in Salesforce based on assessing their qualification history. We transformed M and F, the male and female, into male and female, and various other things happened in Salesforce. So there's, ranging from simple through to very sophisticated levels of transformation, and it can be made to be business rules dependent and very, very dynamic. The other thing to notice is that, of course, we've spoken about the round trip, the integration between Salesforce and then downstream into the relevant ERPs and back again. So if we take this external ID here and come over to SAP, just need to sign back in because it timed me out. Just to show you that same account is being created in SAP as a customer record with the matching ID. And that kind of completes the product demonstration. I'll then drop back into Jitterbit and show you just a small amount of how these things have been done so that you can appreciate the dynamic nature of what Jitterbit does for you, because this is all done in a very intuitive clicks.code way. So loading up the same customer ID here now, and you can see that's the same customer, Eric Hines, as we have in Salesforce. So kind of proving that round trip scenario. So if I jump back into Jitterbit here for a moment, you recall the account was set through unaltered, so the raw data. This is the SQL on the left-hand side, and then you've got the account object on the right-hand side. And you can do things like hide unmapped nodes to get a clean view. And you can see that by and large, that's unaltered. When you have the white FX symbol, it tells you that you're doing something with the data itself. So there's a function or a transformation routine running. Just the blue highlighted nodes is simply a mapping, a pass-through of the payload at a value level. Whereas if we look at the contact, you'll see there are more white FX symbols, which tells us that we're doing things with the various attributes. So if I come back now to this flow, which is kind of more interesting, just to quickly touch on the canonical model and some of the dynamic routing. This top level operation here is the operation we publish as the webhook that receives the event-based push notifications. Top level error handling success, so we respond back to the outbound message and tell Salesforce we've got it and it's okay. Soap fault handling if we need it. A dynamic SQL query which is crafted based on the object and GUID that's pushed to us in the event notification. The map to the canonical, so this is the very long account structure and all of the substructures, so obviously you'll be familiar with this, it's quite lengthy. And then we've mapped onto a nice simple canonical model, so a simple version of the account. And then what we do lower down, if we jump into the the dynamic router, tells us whether we're going off to SAP or over here to sales, so it's NetSuite. If we look at the customer create structures, you're then coming off the canonical model and then into, in this case, SAP. And likewise at the customer level on NetSuite, the same again, the same canonical model over into now the NetSuite structure. Now the power of that is that you've decoupled Salesforce from SAP and NetSuite. SAP and NetSuite don't know about each other, and neither of them know about Salesforce or vice versa. So you've got the abstraction layer, which means you've avoided, excuse me, tightly coupling and creating brittle integrations that then will break as soon as one of those endpoints changes. That could be a schema change, it could be a version upgrade, it could be even swapping the system out for a different system altogether. Once you have Jitterbit in the middle, it provides that abstraction layer, much like virtualization did in the kind of computing world. It allows you to have a longer life expectancy and almost have an evergreen, immortal strategy. So you have a hub with spokes, and you can swap out the spokes far more easily than you can if you have a tightly integrated point-to-point kind of spaghetti type arrangement. So that's the power of the platform. And if we're okay for time, I'll just show you one last thing, which is how easy it is to create a Salesforce query. So this is a live build, something you should never do in a demonstration, but here we go. So testing the Salesforce connection there to my developer org. It's reading out the objects in my org. So if I take the account object, the one we've just been looking at, and now I can build the query visually, so I can select all the fields, I can add conditions. I won't do in this case because I know there's only 9 also records. I can test the query, I can see the records I'm getting back, I can move forwards. I can decide what I want to do, temporary storage, use an existing one, click next, create the text-based schema for that temporary storage based on the SQL. Yes, please. I don't want it to run on a schedule. Call this INSPARK and click finish. And now we have this all fully built out. I can click test query. I'm actually in the transformation now, the operation. It's going to load the data into the transformation. The key thing about this is that you get to see the dynamic nature of Jitterbit and the connectors to things like Salesforce, but the same is true of SAP. It builds the structures out for you. These source and target structures aren't things that you need to build yourself. So you can see now we have a text-based structure built from the accounts here, and you can see you have 18 records, and I can start to step through the records and inspect the data. Now there's no transformation happening here, but if I start to apply transformation functions, the source on the left-hand side will be the source in Salesforce, and the right-hand side will be post-transformation. So I think that's as much as we have time for right now. There's far more I could show you and would love to show you, but hopefully that gives you a feel for the power of the platform and also the ease of use. You don't need to be a technical genius or a software programmer. It helps in some cases, but to Wouter's point earlier, we have many business analysts and functional consultants and admins using the tool very successfully. So hopefully you find that useful, and I'll hand back to my colleagues at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Kit. It was really, really useful. And to be honest, I was actually looking at the vision more than the technical functionality, functions. Probably our team checked already those. But I'm really impressed by some of the things you already showed. Thank you for that. So I think currently we have a little bit more time, and we are going to look at the questions. I'll go over the questions, and let's go one by one. Now, the first question is about MuleSoft and Jitterbit. We know MuleSoft is Salesforce.com's product, and they acquired it. And Jitterbit has also Salesforce.com investment. So can we use at the same time? This is the question. And yes, let's answer this.
So I'll take that question if you don't mind. It's Keith. So
okay.
We do have many clients that go for a coexistence strategy, either Jitterbit and MuleSoft for different reasons, or other enterprise service buses or legacy integration platforms. Now, there is a decision to be made, and Wouter touched on it earlier in terms of kind of market positioning and target audience. We're upper mid-market, lower enterprise. MuleSoft typically is more expensive, more complex, it takes longer to implement, so not necessarily the same strengths that we have in terms of agility and time to value. It's more of a platform for software developers. You need Java skills, etc. So the barrier to entry is higher. If you're a very, very large company like a bank or maybe a pharmaceutical company, maybe MuleSoft is a good fit. But interestingly, Salesforce internally use Jitterbit for 400 to 500 projects, and are a twice investor and a big customer, our single biggest customer. So it kind of, and we still have a lot of referrals from Salesforce and Salesforce partners because of that market positioning scenario. So we tend to find that 80% of the time we're the right fit in terms of solution, and 20% of the time it might be MuleSoft, and very rarely we overlap in the same deals, in the same bids. So really, you need to understand the shape, size of the organization and the project, and then we can establish what the best fit is.
Yeah, I can also tell a few words about this. I also know MuleSoft. We have experience on MuleSoft and Jitterbit. Sometimes, as you said, doing an integration may not be feasible on MuleSoft because of the cost. It's very strategical. It's as you say, and more technical. It's big, but there are many cases that we are able to use Jitterbit. Also, as you say, Salesforce is using. Let's pass to this next one. Yes, we are going to share the recording of this. That's another question from Tony. The other question is, I'm going to translate this. When there is a multi-entity, how do you structure the architecture? What kind of architecture?
Multi-entity as in multi-tenancy. Is that the question?
I think it's multi-entity means, for example, you have 5 different companies in a group, and their operations are different, etc. Maybe you would like to centralize some of your information, financial information, or maybe they are even using different solutions. You can make it more bigger, but are you establishing different Jitterbits, or I think that's the question. How do you create the architecture?
So there's two sides to that. You have the commercial side, which is to do with the subscription and the orgs or the tenants. Now, most clients, even if they're a group of companies, opt for one subscription, one org, and then we have what we call environments, which are almost like orgs within orgs, so they can then be used as a way to segregate one business unit or one legal entity from another very successfully. And we even use that in the OEM space for multi-tenancy across, completely unrelated customers. We do have some companies that then opt for multiple orgs, but that is a rarity, although we can support that commercially. Technically, the system is multi-tenant ready, and you can isolate and segregate between multiple entities within the platform very easily. So that's technically not a concern. And to some extent, I've just shown that, because you could have had a group with one CRM, Salesforce, that was running on SAP and NetSuite in two different geographies, and then we've shown how we can dynamically route. Now, that was within one project, but we could have had that project in different environments and kept them completely separate as well. So there's lots of flexibility around multi-tenancy and kind of hierarchical structures.
Okay. Thanks for the answer. Another question again. Is there any MDM functionality inside Jitterbit?
Is there any MD?
Yeah, master data management functionality.
Yeah, so we don't. So
you actually you showed some functions which you can, what did you say that? I forgot the name, but yeah, please go.
Yeah. Okay, so there's two sides to that as well. So we often get asked about master data management, and we often execute successfully against most MDM use cases. Where we stop is that we don't have a dedicated MDM module that allows you to have a separate golden record. So that's another system that actually acts as the golden record. But if you can nominate one of your existing line of business systems or system of records as the master, Salesforce for say customer records, SAP for maybe financial records, then we can federate data in a master data management scenario between those different business systems and avoid you buying a dedicated MDM platform. If you need an MDM platform, then we have a partner product that we recommend that we integrate very successfully with, and then we go to market jointly. So it depends. Most people ask for MDM and find they don't need a dedicated MDM solution, and we can do it. And then the few that do, we recommend a partner product.
You know what? I also worked on MDM in the past, and yeah, there was some requirements. But as you said, if we select a solution, in most cases we select Salesforce as the master of customer. It just works. I mean, Salesforce serves to all the other solutions in the company. But if there are more than one solutions in place, which are for maybe different business units, maybe for different regions, etc. If you want to centralize, you have to choose an application or an MDM. So it's, but we can, I see also here in this demonstration kit, we can solve, as you said, many of the requirements. That's good. And the next question is, what about the encryption? Can we encrypt our payloads?
Yes, you can. So Jitterbit operates from a privacy by design and security by design standpoint, and it's data in motion, not data at rest, and data is encrypted end to end. We don't log payload information unless you explicitly choose to do so, so it's a design decision. But if you do, we then have lots of encryption functionality, so you can encrypt the payloads that you do log or journal elsewhere. So yes is the short answer.
Good. Can I develop my own connector?
Yes, you can. There's two ways. We have a zero code connector builder where you can use a graphical wizard to wrap a RESTful service as a connector. And then we have a full-blown connector SDK, a software development kit, where you can build a first-class connector. On the roadmap, we also have an exchange being released, a bit like the App Exchange, but for Jitterbit, where you'll be able to share, potentially sell, etc., connectors, templates, recipes. So that's coming out in the near future as well.
Oh, we are ready to do put our own connections, local connections for that. It will be great. And the next question is, can I add custom headers through connections?
Yes, you can. So as well as the first class connectors that we have, which are purpose built for systems like Salesforce, SAP, NetSuite, we also have generic connectors. So we have a SOAP-based web service connector, we have an HTTP RESTful API connector, and you have full support within those connectors to add custom headers, including, authentication tokens or, signatures or whatever it might be. So yeah, full support for whatever you can do in SOAP UI and Postman, for instance, we can do in Jitterbit.
Okay, I'll quickly go over just 3 more. Is there a retry mechanism? What is the preferred way to retry failed transactions? This is a headache, I know. Is there a mechanism in Jitterbit?
Yes, there is. So depending on the endpoint and its support for retries or rollbacks, and Salesforce is a good example, we have inbuilt into the connector, and this is the value of the Jitterbit connector over and above the Salesforce API natively. It has, for instance, retries, backoffs, and fail-safes that you can configure on the connector. So you might say a maximum of 5 retries with a backoff in between each retry, and then a fail-safe might be to quarantine the message, encrypt it, of course, to the earlier point. That allows us then to troubleshoot and potentially replay once we resume the integration pipeline. We also have the ability to integrate with message queues, where we can do a publish subscriber type model and guarantee delivery of the message. So there's lots of capability around retries and fail safe and even safe self-healing routines as well.
Okay. The next one, can we use Jitterbit as a backup recovery disaster solution in terms of data, maybe?
So one thing you can do, I mean, Jitterbit isn't designed to be a disaster recovery or a business continuity solution in itself, but what you could do, and I have seen clients do this, is say we're using Salesforce and Salesforce is unlikely to go down, but some clients say, well, I want a copy of my data. So they might be using it to replicate their Salesforce data into a SQL server or another system, maybe on premise within their corporate enterprise. So you could do that, and we can see data. So you can do a get current, stay current, and a trickle feed continually thereafter. We've got lots of functionality around doing deltas and differencing. So there's some smart stuff we can do there as well to allow you to take a backup, let's say, of Salesforce or another system.
Okay, and the last question, I think this comes to Walter. How does Jitterbit's pricing model work, and what is the minimum entry level price? And what does that offer?
Yes, of course. Well, that's a very good question. So our pricing is very transparent. There's 3 bundles, and everything we have functionally and technically is included in the bundles. That's also on our website if you look at Jitterbit pricing plan. So it's standard, pro, and enterprise. And we price on systems in production. So we're not charging you for dev and test, just for system in production. So that is based on the number of endpoints. So the standard package has 3 endpoints. So let's say you want to do Salesforce, Magento, and NetSuite. That's 3. And in that standard package, you can run everything.
I opened the website, by the way.
Yeah.
I hope everyone can see.
Yeah. And this standard package, everything runs on a schedule. Right? So we're not charging you for users, not for throughput, not for the number of environments. We're not charging for cores. So it's actually quite comprehensive. Also included is free training and certification for your people. And there's an SLA to access support. You can log as many tickets as you would like, etc. Right? So the kind of premier support offering, it comes standard with the bundle. Right? Standard Pro Enterprise, standard price starts at about $25K US for an annual subscription. So that's the start, and it runs up to about $110,000 US ACV.
Okay, very good. I think this is the that is just one. Okay, Just one more question. Let's answer that and let's finish. Just to clarify, do you support and orchestrate asynchronous service calls or just manage asynchronous calls? And could you please share some big players of your competitors? I couldn't understood the last bit, but okay.
So I think there's two sides to the question. So the first piece is around synchronous and asynchronous calls, and we support both, and you can fire operations synchronously or asynchronously, and that includes also not just at the integration level, but also the way in which we can handle, be it consuming or publishing APIs. And the second question, I think, related to Jitterbit's competitors. Hopefully you want to look at us and not those, but Wouter shared some of them in the Gartner Magic Quadrant earlier, and obviously that we have a very strong positioning in the leaders quadrant.
Yeah, I think yeah, that answers the competitor bit. I'll just show again this one. I think, but one thing I would like to add on top of this, as INSPARK, maybe a client is buying one instance, all right? But INSPARK is investing these things, and we are investing years, and we are doing big investments and offering these solutions to all of our customers. And it has to be successful. Our business model is based on success, customer success. Our values are established accordingly. So it is so important for us to choose the right product. As I said, we were doing MuleSoft, but Jitterbit is what you call water. You were calling decoupling. So we are now a stronger player in this market. And I believe during the presentation, I realized I have, shall I say, a dream or a vision, but I like electricity, for example, like telcos. I'm expecting app market, especially enterprise application market, to become a deregulated market. So why we have to use the same application in a company? Why don't we use different applications, different solutions according to users, whatever users select? And why don't we use at the same time different functionalities, different solutions? This Jitterbit-like functionality, Jitterbit, I think can lead to that. That's what I felt during the demo. This is so interesting. I hope we could answer your questions. We finished our time. Thank you everyone for attending this webinar. We are going to send the recording and upload to probably our website. Hope to see you again in the next coming webinars. Thanks everyone. Bye-bye.